Right now, President Obama holding another debt ceiling meeting with Speaker Boehner and House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. But forget those two. 6 is the big number today. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chris Cotter. Neil Cavuto comes back tomorrow, but today it's all about the Gang of 6, or is it bait and switch? The White House claims this is the way forward. It aims to slash the deficit by hiking taxes now and forming committees to cut most of the spending later. That sound familiar? Well, it should. In 1982, President Reagan agreed to a deal including $3 in spending cuts for every dollar in tax hikes. The cuts never came. The taxes certainly did. Ron Paul was there. The Texas congressman and Republican presidential candidate is here now. Congressman Paul, are you concerned that we are doomed to repeat history here?
I suspect we will. I mean, that's the way governments operate, and there'll be a lot of promises. Actually, the only thing that you can count is next year's budget. We only do 1 year budget at a time. So all these promises, the outer years, it really doesn't mean anything. And that's where all the cuts are in later years.
Well, with that said, is it trickery? Is it just a way to get a deal done? Then why are we looking at years 7, 8, 9, and 10 in terms of making all the cuts? Why don't we focus on cutting next year?
Well, I guess they don't have the stomach for cutting, because even though there's a lot of noise about cutting, there's still a lot of noise out there about spending. And, the Republicans are supposed to be the cutters, but they never talk about cutting anything from our military occupations around the world. Mm-hmm. And then if you tend to be liberal or moderate, Republican or Democrat, you certainly don't want to cut any entitlements. So the process goes on. So there's a pretense, and they're always taking care of the emergency. Just like the CR. The CR, they went up to the deadline. They finally passed it. Yeah. They're doing the same thing with this debt increase. And I've been predicting something will pass. The debt will be increased. But what my big concern is that they will liquidate the debt. They will default through the inflationary process.
And that's going to take a little while. I wanted to ask you about cut, cap, and balance. Now, you signed the cut, cap, and balance pledge, yet last night on the floor you voted against the proposal. Why is that, or why was that?
Well, the pledge didn't have any details. It was a single sheet of paper. It said they would have significant cuts, and they wouldn't raise taxes, and they would work for a balanced budget amendment. Well, the balanced budget amendment hasn't been written up. We didn't vote on that. And and they didn't say in the pledge that you were going to vote for a $2.4 trillion increase in the national debt limit. So, no, it wasn't the same thing. One was a pledge to work on it, and it had a general outline. Yesterday was a bill that was precise, and obviously the worst part was raising the national debt limit. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really approach anything. There were no real cuts, significant cuts. $100 billion out of $1.6 trillion deficit. That doesn't mean very much.
Where do we make the substantial cuts that you speak of? How would we be able to do that, since we're having such a hard time even pushing $1.5 trillion in cuts as part of this McConnell plan?
Well, it is going to be hard to do it in one fell swoop, but I'll tell you what, you could change the debt limit by just wiping off the books of 1.6 we owe to the Fed. That's not a real debt. So you could lower the debt limit, and then we should get together and start cutting. I think the cutting overseas is the best place to start, and then why not just work on the cash flow? Why pay people in the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department of Agriculture, stop all corporate welfare programs, all bailout programs, and just pay what you have to pay. You could pay your Social Security recipients, you could pay the interest on the debt, and you could work ways out of it. But there's not the stomach for that. They're not willing to do that.
Congressman Paul, always nice talking with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, the White House and Harry Reid saying they like the Gang of 6 approach.